that we acknowledge that Saldo has a looser standard, but that because the intent of the PRD is different, maybe I'm speaking for myself, I never did a tighter standard there.
I thought consistency was rule.
Yeah.
So my feeling would be go with 8 inches, but I don't know if it makes any difference.
We talked about that meeting in September, if I'm not mistaken, and that's whenever we all.
Well, I
thought
started in
we would-
September, but we also talked about it last
Okay.
month when you
All
were
right.
absent.
Okay.
Yeah. I brought it up again.
Okay. Well, in any event, in terms of the minutes, and again, I apologize for not catching it, I think they should just say there was a discussion on either, 3/8 inches of pavement, because I don't think there's.
Okay, I need, is that the word to say?
That's how I would propose.
It was discussed.
It was discussed.
Whether it should be 8 or 6 inches.
Yeah, and then when we get to
That
the
way,
ordinance, we
tonight
can
we can talk
deal with
about
the substance, yeah.
I agree.
That sounds good.
Instead of an agreed, it was a discussion. They got it. I think the tree size should follow Saldo. Or Beagle. It's my. I don't know. But you can twist arms. I'm trying.
Well, if we modify the minutes as Kevin suggests, then we can discuss it later. Okay? Okay, the same, but any other changes to the minutes of the last meeting? Not, does someone like to make a motion?
With the two changes, we discussed, I move the minutes be approved.
I'll second that. So, motion by Kevin, second by myself. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
Could I just say one thing about the AD sidewalks?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Pennsylvania, the sidewalks aren't gonna be ADA. And the way that it's structured in our Saldo, we're putting in sidewalks, period. It doesn't say ADA, obviously, Holland does. And the reason being is that, in order for a sidewalk to be ADA compliant, it has to be less than 1 foot and 12. And with the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, if you force a sidewalk along the roadways, we have roadways that are 12% slopes, and you're putting a sidewalk along there. So, I mean, it never meets ADA requirements, we're putting in sidewalks. Now, at the intersections, and I added the word intersection to the minutes, as Jackie and I were editing. Now, at the intersections, we do put the RWs, or what do you call it, the bubble, I call it bubble wrap. So we do put those on each one of the intersections, but even the intersections themselves can still have the same slope as the roadway. So, that's why I gotta be a little bit careful with the way that, you know, if they're gonna, they must be ADA because they don't.
Well, the difference between must and will is, I get it.
Yeah, like I said,
My point was, will would be, you ask the developer, will you, are your sidewalks ADA compliant? They say, yes, they will be. As a township, we're saying, they must, they should be, they must be.
Yeah.
As, knowing that there are limitations.
And that's why I did, when you brought up the word must, I didn't have a problem with it.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that, just for the board's information, you know, welcome to Pennsylvania.
That's always good to know. Thank you. Okay, development proposals, Stibbers, lot line revision.
Sure, thank you. I'm Ken Howard with Bankton Engineers, and here on behalf of Mr. Stivers. He's out of town this week, but his daughter and her husband are here, the Simpsons. So we have submitted to you revisions of the drawing that you saw at previous meetings. At the request of the landowners, we've revised the drawing. This subdivision plan as presented today is basically a division of Mr. Stivers parcels and not the Simpsons parcel. Their home parcel at the Simpsons lot will remain as is. There is a driveway along this veranda lane, the private 16-foot wide lane that we show on our map, that the Simpsons do have an interest in, so we still do have their signatures on the plan to give approval for that portion of the plan, but their home lot at the Simpsons home will not change. This lot line revision is basically carving a piece of property off for Mr. Stivers so that his garage can be added to the piece of land that his house is situated on. And that's all this is a lot line revision. So if you have any questions, we'd be glad to try to answer.
Basically, instead of affecting 3 lots, should be affecting 2 lots.
That's correct.
Dan?
Sure. Yes, we have revised the original, or revised, we have reviewed the original plans and the revised plans. And I was just gonna joke around and say, we should call this the cookie factor, since he brought cookies. I recommend that we approve it, but.
I recommend you eat some cookies.
But-
No,
but
honestly.
in all seriousness, we reviewed the original plan, we reviewed the revised plans, we reviewed the comments from Allegheny County. We believe that the plans as prepared for this evening meet all the requirements of the Saldo. The request that we have in our letter dated November the 5th, 2024, is that the landowner, the property owners prepare a maintenance agreement. And the concern that we always have with any subdivision like this is that it's not today, it's what happens when you sell the property and move to Florida and the new people come in and they say, well, how did I get stuck with maintaining the road? But you need, in my opinion, you need something in writing that says, okay, if you buy this piece of property, it's almost like a homeowners association, where if you buy this piece of property, whatever you come up with, I don't really care. He doesn't do anything, and you take care of it all. He chips in 50%, you name it, and obviously this is a document that doesn't have to come back before us. You can change it at will as you go forward, or to whoever you sell property to. And again, from the township's point of view, first of all, we don't like private roads. Secondly, is that, and the reason being is that it gets complicated sometimes, because the fear we always have is that there's 2 foot of snow out there, you refuse to plow it, and next thing you know, an emergency vehicle needs to go down that road, and we can't do it. And that's where it gets dicey. So the only comment we basically have is that you prepare, and I would say submit to the township, just so we know that you did a maintenance agreement.
Let me add, if in the future, if you sell and someone gets a mortgage, you're gonna have to have a maintenance agreement. The bank will require that. So if you do it now, it'd be good, but you have to have an agreement for a private road. Who's gonna take care of it?
And just so the board knows, the whole reason this was changed is because Roger's daughter Sandy and her husband have a mortgage on their property, and the bank was just jumping through major hoops. And that's when Roger said, "No, I'm not gonna affect the property, make this a lot easier." That's why we're here.
All good. Move to recommend approval.
First of all, any comments from the audience?
That's clear.
Make a motion?
Move to recommend approval, subject to satisfying the engineer's last comments.
On November 5th.
Yeah, November 5th.
We have a second.
I'll second that motion to approve.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I
Thank
just
you.
want to commend the team of people that you have here at the building. It's always a pleasure working with Jackie and Jeff and Dan. So thank you very much. Some municipalities aren't that way, so I really commend you for that, yes.
You don't say.
I'm shocked.
Thank
Totally
you.
shocked.
Shock and appall.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pardon?
Thank you.
Next up is the Cove Run subdivision. There's someone here to please state your name and who you're representing.
Matthew Stallman, a surveyor with Scheffler and Company. I'm here representing the Allegheny Land Trust. They desire to do a simple subdivision of the property that's currently held by Miller Family Holdings LP. Basically, they want to subdivide off the existing Miller well pad from the original 180 acre property that they wish to purchase and then put into their clean and green.
Dan, would like to talk about your comments?
Thank you very much. So we received this simple subdivision, in the words of Cecil Tranquil, there's no such thing as a simple subdivision. But on November the 12th, and where do I want to start with this? Okay, so did you receive a copy of my letter dated November 15th?
Yes.
So let me just briefly go through it. In your tabulation, just revise the acreage. I think you're like 100th off or something like that, but just make it all jive. Indicate the zoning of the adjacent properties, indicate the survey date that you were out there doing this. Indicate that the existing wellhead on your drawings as to where those are located, including any buffers. Indicate any or all existing easements. The existing or the old Cove Run Road you have coming up and it like stops.
Yes.
Right past the house. I guess what I would like you to do, and we can provide you with our drawings.
We addressed actually your comments today, and I brought our response letter. We have addressed all of that and extended that right away, based on the old location as best we could tell from 2006 aerial when that road showed up.
That's fine, because what I'd like, because I think what you're gonna do is you're going to ask to vacate it, or vacate the portion that's not being used anymore. So what I was looking to see is you put the whole Cove Run Road on there, and then if your desire is to eliminate that easement, that upper thing, you could show that if that's what your aim was.
That might be the land trust's goal, to vacate that remaining bit of right of way.
But show it so that we can vacate it, so whoever picks up the plans the next time kind of knows what you did, that type of thing. The next one is so Indiana Township has a piece of property that abuts up against yours, way up on the top, above Emerling Park.
Yes.
And that piece of property has always been landlocked for us. And what I did was, if you wanna grab one of these, and again, it's a little bit crude just because. I think that's enough to go down. So what we did, and again, like I said, you're more than welcome to our CAD files on this that shows where the old road was. But we'd ask that the land trust or the Miller property consider giving us an easement where that black line is, so that someday in the future that we have the ability to put a roadway or a trail or something up there so that we can access the upper portion of the township property. Again, it's a request.
Okay, and on that, we contacted Land Trust today when we were addressing your letter, and they weren't necessarily opposed to it. They wanted to maybe address that once the subdivision is done and they actually have acquired the property.
And I'm okay with that too, but I just wanted to bring it out, air it out a little bit, and as you can, well, see or not see on the drawing, the line that parallels that, the little faint line, that's the Rachel Carson Trail that goes across the property. So on yours, if you would at least put in the Rachel Carson Trail.
Okay.
That's on it, that goes across your property. We'll get to that comment in a minute. And again, that's the path that, I mean, there is no easy path to get to that upper tier, because in the world of our township, we don't like our roads to be more than 12%. And even this route, I end up with a 20% part of it. But thank you for at least discussing it with the trust and thinking about that. Moving on to the next page.
Dan, before you leave that, so I'm confused. Where are you talking about on this thing? Where do you wanna see the?
I think it's clear as mud. What do you think?
That's why I'm asking.
That's no problem. And let me try to show and tell here. So over here up is where Emerling Park is, and the stream that
Okay.
makes the horseshoe.
Got it.
Okay, so this really darkened area is the new Cove Run Road.
Okay.
The one that's behind it, which is up here, that's the old Cove Run Road.
Right,
They used to be there. And if you go up right here on this map, that's the oil well site
right,
with the wells.
okay,
And if you follow their road down to this point right here, right where that dark line goes, where it starts, if you've ever been at the top of Cove Run Road, you'll see like a roadway that's like cut in there a little bit. That's where it would start there, and then it would meander through, there's an existing trail that actually goes through there. And it would follow that dark line,
There's a sign for the trail also.
and it's got a couple loops in it in order to get the slope down a little bit. I guess it's almost like the Cove Run that they call it the toboggan trail.
okay, so, all right, so I'm following you, so, yeah, I'm with you so far.
And then this
but-
little light line here, that's the Rachel Carson
Yeah.
Trail.
Okay, so which township property then is landlocked?
So it's this piece right here.
Even though Cove Run Road's at the top of the page, or am I?
Well, it comes to
So
three.
this is the stream that
Oh,
goes
so it's,
around here.
it's not so that it's landlocked because of lot line, it's landlocked because of the stream?
Because of topography. Yeah, if-
Okay,
It's
thank
the
you.
property way up on top of the hill
Thank
above the street.
So if you were to go where the baseball fields and the soccer fields are,
Yeah.
and you look at the stream,
Right.
and look at the bank that goes up this way,
Yeah.
we can't get to it.
Got it.
It's
Got it.
landlocked not because of property boundaries, but because of topography.
That's what was throwing me. I'm sorry, thank you. That's-
And,
that's
and
good.
again, the map is really crude just because, I didn't wanna spend a lot of time or effort putting in a road that we may not get.
Right, okay,
But I wanted to provide to you tonight just at least a tentative path so that when people goes, well, where do they want one? You know, that type of thing. So, on your plans too, if you would show Cove Run Road going through it, this is 50-foot right of way. And
We've
not-
updated that.
Thank you. So you're way ahead of me.
We tried to address all your comments today before the meeting.
So indicate all the existing utilities, including the overhead power cables that go through there. This is just a standard comment that we ask all applicant, is there any existing natural artificial features that needs to be shown in the plans that haven't been shown?
To my knowledge, no, there was nothing that would affect just this.
And that's the correct
Something.
answer. No is a good answer. Change the covenant, get the word "and" design out of there, put the statement on your plan someplace about the township not incurring any liability for any of those things that we haven't seen. And then the recording plan shall not be further subdivided unless in accordance with the protective covenants, and then give me a copy, a digital copy of it at the end of the day.
Okay.
That's it.
Jeff, any comments?
The only question I have for you, you're acting as the agent on behalf of the land trust.
Yes.
Is Mr. Miller aware of this, who owns the property legally right now?
I believe so.
Because I don't want to get a call from him or his family that says, I didn't know anything about this.
No, we have been in
I mean, I
contact
know the
with,
agent can sign, but you're actually bypassing the actual owner.
yeah, we have been in contact with the owner through this process, because before the subdivision, actually did an Alta survey of the entire Miller property, which actually contains another 80 acres to the south of this.
And has the owner expressed any concerns or objections or?
Not to my knowledge.
That's all I have, Dan.
And Matthew, if you want our CAD file on this, just to pick the Rachel Carson Trail off of it, stuff like that.
Oh, that'd be great to get that shown on here.
So, just a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Anybody? Questions?
It might be helpful for the supervisors. It does appear that Mr. Miller is somebody representing the Miller Family Holdings partnership that's gonna be signing this plan.
Yes.
You may want to just have a letter or something from him.
Okay.
For the supervisors. My real question though is, not that I'm in favor of cookie cutter lots, but, lot number 2 is irregular. Can you explain how those boundary lines were
Those boundary lines were created based on offsetting the limit of disturbance that was already approved when that well pad was built.
Okay, okay,
We essentially took the limit of disturbance approved by DEP and offset that line to create the well pad lot.
okay, so the idea was to make that lot encompass that limit of disturbance, but not be any larger than it had to.
Yes.
Okay.
And Kevin, if you look at this plan here,
Yeah.
you'll
The
see,
one I can't read.
yeah,
Yeah,
what was done on the cheap.
I understand.
But you'll see the outline of the actual pad there itself, plus the access room to get into it.
Yep.
But, and Matthew, if you wanna pop that on there just for posterity.
We actually have that on page 2 of the plan, the well pad, the access road,
Yeah.
the limit of disturbance line, and all the, well heads that are on the pad.
I'm sorry, I was just getting this tonight. Good job, Matthew.
I just have one comment. I don't know if you might answer this, Dan or Jeff, but, you know, looking at this map, I see where the property line does not follow curves in Cove Run Road. People own little bits of property on the opposite side of the road from their main holdings. There's these two corners. Is that an issue, or is that could be a problem? I assume the heavier black line is the property line.
Where's this at, Dan?
Right
Oh,
here and right here.
so, and again, I'll let you lawyers, I'll talk about this, but it's one of my favorite stories about Colonel Pinkerton that my surveyor, teacher told me, is that back during the Civil War, I can't remember what it was, somebody wanted to go across somebody's property, and the landowner said, you're not taking your army across my property. So they went back to Congress, and this was Colonel Pinkerton, and he went back to Congress, and they passed a law that every thoroughfare now has a 33-foot wide right on it, no matter where it is in the world. So that way the armies can go across the lands and fight the battles. So as a result of that, all the roads have a 33-foot wide right-of-way centered on the roadway. Now, where it gets complicated legally is that roads have a tendency of meandering and growing and moving. And we find quite often, I'm sure you do too, Matthew, that the road a lot of times isn't in the original path of the right-of-way.
A lot of the times.
And I think what you're asking, Dan, is that since we're reviewing this plan right now, I think what you're asking is that would you provide a 50-foot right-of-way centered on the road as it is right now for us? On your property side?
On Cove Run and on Fieldview, because I think Fieldview is the actual road that is cutting off and making those 2 corners.
What is the fate of Fieldview? Is that,
Yeah, it's Fieldview Lane.
It's shut down
I know it's shut down,
because of the turnpike overpass being closed.
but it's still a township road, right?
Still township road, yes. We have a gate across it at the entrance, but occasionally we have to open it for the people who want to go to the pet cemetery.
So I guess on that
Or the
road.
surveyors that ask you, which
For that.
we did that.
I think what you're asking, Dan, is to, on the Miller portion of the property, that wherever the road is, that at least we have a 33-foot right away on the property side.
That's fine. I'm more concerned about this property owner has this little triangle over here. It's his, on the other side of the road, which to me seems like just a waste, really.
Yeah, I understand, that kinda happened because of the way these deeds were laid out. The bounding calls did not, in this case, call for Fieldview Lane, so the bounding calls went up and crossed the road in a couple spots.
And I'm not asking you to change it or anything, it's just wanted to note it.
So to go back to Dan's comment, are you satisfied, I mean, it does say, I'm looking at Fieldview Lane, 33-foot right of way on the plan. So are you okay with the way this is now? I mean, okay, all right.
My family members, because my wife's father is named Dan, and he's a doctor of dental surgery. His son is named Dan, we call him Dano, and I was dubbed with Slag. So, and we do run into trouble here, but yeah, Slag.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes it's as good as it's gonna get, but yes, to
Right.
answer your question, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
And also with the knowledge that I believe that there's 33 foot on that, whether it's shown or described or anywhere in the world, thanks to Carl Pinkerton.
Any comments from the audience? Okay, what's the board's pleasure?
Guess I'm on a roll. I'll move, that we approve the, Cove Run subdivision, subject to, satisfaction of the engineer's, comments in a letter dated November 15, 2024.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, Michael? Motion by Kevin, second by Michael. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with that. Okay. Now we're on to the old business. Revisions to the PRD section of the zoning ordinance. Hopefully for the last time. Turn that on. Okay, I think the only things we really need to talk about are section 403C and section 403C 5, 6, and 7, and section 8, two particular topics. We're talking about this, what is excluded from the calculation of common open space in this area. And what I talked about last month, which Mike and Peter weren't here for, is, and it must not have been clear because Kevin, when he revised this, didn't follow up. The floodplains and regulated wetlands, steep slopes, and slide-prone areas. I said if any of that was exceeded 50% in the common open space, I mean, in total of the three categories, that anything over 50% could not be included in the calculation of the common open space. Okay? And the reason I did this, or thought about this, was the fact that in the past, we've had PRDs where the parts that were undevelopable, because there were steep slopes and stuff, that became the open space, so it's basically, other than looking at it, it's worthless. This way, at least 50% of that should be available for either passive or active recreation by the residents of the PRD. So I think, can we change this, I guess? I was thinking in terms of, hopefully my battery stays up. We could change that where we talk about, just make a section 5, and then section 8 would become section 6. Just make a section 5, we put all this together. And if we can just agree on the verbiage tonight, I think we can wrap this up. I think all the other changes as far as the commas and the word change here and there have all been addressed already.
And I apologize for missing last month's meeting, but were we not going to explicitly exclude the buffer areas?
What?
The buffer areas? I thought we had that in a prior draft, that buffer areas would be excluded from the common areas. But maybe I missed something.
Yeah, that's not mentioned here at all.
And I think, I think we had it in some of the prior drafts.
Well, let's take care of this one first, and
Okay.
Robert's gonna address the thing about the buffer areas. Just look at this thing. Usually I have my keyboard in front of me, I don't have to deal with this. Okay. Now, how do we want to start with item number 5, 50% of floodplain regulated wetlands?
So here's what I scribbled down.
Okay.
Put the word any between of and floodplain. And then instead of the semicolon after wetlands, have a comma.
Okay, well, 50%, so we're saying
50% of any floodplains or regulated wetlands, comma.
50% of
So I
any.
have word
You have to, I'm a one-finger typer.
No worries. Any floodplain or regulated wetlands, and then a comma. Then delete the 6 and the 50% of. And then at the, after townships ordinances, change the semicolon to another comma. The Oxford comma,
Okay.
police can come after me. Add the word or. And then, delete 750% of and just add, conclude the sentence with slide prone areas.
So what triggers a wetland delineation?
Well, that's what the word regulated is modifying. So I think if the township or DEP says it's a wetland, then that's regulated as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
the DEP would cover that in there.
Yeah.
In the steep slopes, basically what what happens with most developments is that steep slopes basically are graded so that they're not steep anymore, so they're gone.
Well, as I understand it, Dan, and the reason and this goes back quite a few months, I think the reason I phrased that is that, I'm paraphrasing, the township ordinances don't have the usual thou shalt not touch a slope of X% language in it. Instead, it's between you and their engineer. However, it seems to me that what that really is saying is that if you decide they can't be touched, then they're not touched, and that's a steep slope that can't be touched under the ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, I'm having a little trouble formatting this correctly. I'm not a word expert, but, what can I say?
So do you want me to read the whole sentence now, or the whole section five?
Just a second, I'm just trying to fix the formatting. Okay, it's close enough. Okay, read the whole thing.
Okay, so section 5 of, what section are we in? 403
403,
See,
C.
C. Section 5 of 403C will now read, 50% of any floodplain or regulated wetlands, comma, steep slopes that are otherwise not permitted to be disturbed under the township's ordinances, comma, or slide-prone areas. Sorry. Previously, number 8 would become number 6.
so you want it or and? Does
No, I think it's, well,
And would be cumulative.
Yeah, we want cumulative.
okay.
It's a and/or.
And slash or.
Whatever, that's like one areas.
Yeah.
In which case we can eliminate the comma. Okay,
Okay.
then, Peter, you had,
Yeah, I
that would
just,
become whatever, you want, that would become number 6, I guess.
yeah, it was just my recollection that we had and probably would want to have, the buffer areas excluded, or at least, I know we had one iteration that, in that first paragraph, under C, common open space, we had said the applicant must exclude from its calculation of required common open space. At one point, we had said at least 50% of the buffer area is required. And then we added any other land within the site that would be incapable of being used for the location of a dwelling.
So we put that number, logical, it becomes number 6.
Maybe, query whether we want it to be 50% or we want the buffer area to be excluded completely from the calculation of open space.
Is the buffer area currently excluded from open space, Jeff?
I don't think so.
believe it is.
No, I don't think
No.
it is.
Dan, is it excluded? I don't think so.
No.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
So just as an example, from the Hartwood Meadows, like I realize, it's water under the bridge. It was not excluded because the developer created this 15-foot wide path, all along the edge, that kind of this open space. And that was how they got up to the percentage, by creating this little 15-foot wide strip all the way down, and up along the power line easement is wider, and then back here and there around 15 feet again. So the buffer is 25 feet, but 15 feet of that buffer was counted as open space. It was, just being transferred to the HOA. The other 10 feet, the buffer zone resides in these lots. So to answer your question, no, I think under the current rules, that buffer counts as open space. In this case, that's how they got up to their final percentage by making that strip. So just the point, in some cases, we have a strip that's whatever, 900 feet long by 15 feet wide. That's counting as open space.
So we did
Here.
address the question about.
I'm sorry?
We did address the question about the buffer area being within a lot, because we.
Right.
Yeah, so this has that separate problem, but the
Right.
buffer area is 25 feet.
Yeah, okay,
15 feet is in the,
is in a lot, we.
10 feet's in the
addressed
lot,
that,
and 15 feet's in the,
Yeah,
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Isn't the buffers,
State your name, please.
sure, Emily Gallons, isn't the buffer supposed to be undisturbed?
Basically, yes, so there are some allowances for some disturbance for like utilities, rights of way, and things like that, your obviously entrance roads.
So if it's supposed to be undisturbed, it feels like trails maybe are a stretch. And if there's no trail, it's really not common open space. Would be something I would pose.
I don't have any problem with excluding the buffer area from the calculation of common open space, since we gave them that bonus in the common open space if they give us more than what the ordinance requires. So, how do the rest of you feel?
I don't feel strongly one way or the other, to tell you the truth at this point, so.
Yeah, my inclination those reasons that, this lady just mentioned.
Mhm.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, if it's a common area, how's it a common area right behind your house? You're
Right.
not gonna get any access.
Right. Okay, let's, how we wanna phrase this.
Well, this should probably, I would suggest, seven's kind of a catch-all, or,
Well,
it's now
that
six.
could be
is-
number six.
It's kind of a catch-all, but I'd probably make that seven, and six, why would you say, buffer areas?
Buffer areas,
Yeah.
6 buffer areas,
It's
okay.
a separate line item.
So the buffer area would be included in the open space calculation or excluded?
Excluded.
Excluded.
So if we're adding a number 7, do we wanna take and out after slide prone areas?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, thank you,
Yep.
Doug, thank you.
I'm having some big problems here trying to format this.
Formatting.
We need somebody more experienced with the word processing. We can pass the draft on to Jackie and she can deal with it.
And then we're adding an and after the new number 6, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we got exclude buffer areas, and then number 8 would become number 7. Someone smarter than me can deal with the things. Going back to number 5, just briefly, we're saying 50% of any floodplains, regulated wetlands, steep slopes, et cetera, excluded. Okay, my intent was the total. This says we just exclude 50%. We're saying if the total of the following exceeds 50%, then the excess cannot be counted toward the common open space. And that's what I meant.
Okay,
How
Does
about
that make
no
sense?
greater than 50% of the following?
yeah, that would
Okay.
work too.
That sounds good, it makes it less typing for me.
Actually, no more than, I can think now. No more than?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Usually I have my keyboard, it's a little easier to type on than this thing, but I left that at home. Okay, and we can deal with the formatting later. Is that, I think that concludes everything. Does anybody else have any thoughts?
Unless you wanna talk about the tree.
Oh, the tree, we've got to get back to the trees. So we've got 8 inches or 6 inches? Thank you, Kevin.
So let me make my pitch for 6 inches, and if you all don't agree, that's not a hill I die on. So in the introduction, we say that, we're incorporating the SALDO except to the extent that those provisions conflict with this article, which suggests to me that, the point of the PRD might be to go beyond the SALDO in certain circumstances. We are, with the PRD, intending to protect and preserve more of the township's existing natural resources. And I'd say if that's our intent, we ought to be asking developers to do what they can to save 6-inch diameter trees.
What's everybody else's opinion?
Yeah, is there any kind of practical issue maybe if we have 6 here and 8 in the Saldo in terms of, I don't know, I was sensing from Jeff or Dan, there might be some practical issue in administering things if there's a difference like that between the two. I don't know.
I mean,
I mean, other
I've
than
never
that, I
seen
thought-
a tree survey. How do they classify the trees in them? How do they count them?
So in any plan, the developer will retain the services of someone to go out, and every tree that's out there, they will GPS and basically tag the tree, put a number on it, and they will measure it at basically 4 foot high. And in your case, a 6-inch diameter, they'll itemize them all. Now, in our saldo, they can take out any tree they want, first of all, 6-inch, 8-inch, I really don't care. But they start to get penalized for anything 8 inches and above.
Right.
So even though you itemize where all the 6 inches is, as far as discouraging the developer to save them, it's not gonna do anything.
So he would have to pay to replace those trees.
He's just, the
ones 8 inches and greater.
Yeah, he's only gonna be penalized, and even at the cost that's through there right now versus the cost of the house, he's gonna take the tree out. It's cheaper to pay the fee.
To answer your question, so the tree surveys that we received, Jack, it's just provided many copies of them for review. They all have a table on the back where they list every single tree, above the designated height. They list the species, the size, and, all the information on each tree. So there's a table with all the information.
So we're saying the table would start at 8 inches, and say, here's all the maples, here's all the oaks, here's all the ash.
But it doesn't, it lists the size of the tree, so it would say, tree number 53 was a 27-inch oak, tree number 65 was a,
So that
9 inch.
if we go to 6 inches, that table becomes bigger.
Yes, the table will become bigger, but my point is they are providing all the information, they aren't just saying, here's how many trees were above 8 inches, they're providing a breakdown of the species and the size of each of those trees.
And I guess my thought is, why have them spend the time counting those 6 and 7 inch trees when it doesn't mean anything until it hits 8 inches?
Well, it doesn't mean anything in terms of the township,
Reimbursement for taking them out.
penalizing or requiring a fee to take them out. It may mean something in terms of approving a PRD and whether the developer is doing everything he can to preserve the natural features.
I don't.
Can I say something?
Would be concerned if we're driving development away, we get too restrictive.
Yeah, so Dan was saying if at the 8-inch level, it doesn't really matter to a developer, he'd take the trees down because in the worth of the dwelling, but does that change much if you go down to 2 more inches? I don't know.
And I told the board this last time, is that, you start putting these types of restrictions in there. If I was a property owner of more than 10 acres, I'd come in for a timbering permit, and I would basically clear cut the property, wait 5 years, and then go do your tree count, and you're gonna have 25 trees left. And he's gonna pay a fee that's now he's reaped the benefits of all the value of the trees that are on his property. And then when it comes time to sell or develop the property, the tree fee becomes a moot point. I mean, that's what I would do if I was in Indiana Township, based on where you're going with these things.
So it was only just,
State your name, please.
Nettie Owens, maybe 2 years ago that the saldo was reviewed and we cut the tree fee down by 90%. So it was more punitive in the past to remove the trees, and the township moved to reduce it. There was resistance to that, but it was not
When you
taken
say
into
cut
consideration.
90%, what do you
Actually,
mean?
that's not true.
That's not true. There was no fee prior to that, so how was it cut?
And then
So there was a change in the saldo at
Secondly,
that point.
if I could just add in there, instead of being $300 a tree, so the original formula was you take the number of trees, divide it by 10, and every tree then multiply by 300. What the supervisors did in the saldo on the planning commission, what they did was they took the divided by 10 away, and they reduced it from $300 down to $30. So the equation's the same. Nothing changed whatsoever. Whether you divide it by 10, multiply it by 300, or whether you take the 10 away and
Right.
make that number 30, And the consensus was at that time, is that each year when they review their fee structure, they could always sit there and make that 30-40. And that's how they equated. So when you say that we took away 90%, that's a misstatement.
I recall that being
The
higher.
formula wasn't, so you described just two numbers as a ratio. It was really the number of trees cut down minus the number of trees planted divided by that denominator number. So what you just said is not entirely correct because that ratio did not apply to the second subtraction part of that equation. So it wasn't exactly 1-to-1. But I'm not saying, it was a huge change either.
Right, so, I mean, that's the way it worked out.
My point stands, I think that, we've been doing things to make it, less restrictive for the developer already. I don't think we need to lower that bar any, and I do think there's benefit in knowing the trees that were there, if only to have an understanding of the impact on the environment, because if we do continuously say that, yes, they can just come in and clear cut it, and we're okay with that, there's going to be an impact with landslides, with, the flora and fauna that are in the area, and people come here because it's a nice open green space. I think we need to make sure that the developers understand that's a priority for us, and I think even just this small thing of letting them know we are interested in keeping as many trees as possible, and we wanna know what's there. I think it sends a message, and it's worthwhile.
Any other comments?
There's a comment on, I'm kinda, to be honest with you, I'm kinda conflicted about all this, over the past couple of years, because, and continuing this study. So one thing I've seen happen, like in Hartwood Meadows and some of the other plans, is we have these rules, they can't cut down certain trees, and we're left with, like in Hartwood Meadows, they did leave some trees, but it's a strip, it's literally single trees all along a retention pond. And to be honest with you, in some cases, those trees die, right? Because they were in a wooded area that was 25 acres. They come in and they bulldozed everything for retention pond, they bulldozed everything for the houses, they left this strip that literally is like 20 feet wide with some trees speckled there. And these trees are, like 90, 100 feet tall, but they were sheltered for all those years, right? And many of them, they get hit by the sun. This past summer, we had, a lot of drought and everything. And in some cases, those trees don't even survive. And the other thing is they're not necessarily the type of tree you'd plant there if I said, oh, I want to populate a 20-foot wide strip in between houses in retention pond. I wouldn't put these, 90-foot tall spindly trees that have no branches for the first 70 feet. And so I'm not telling you guys what to do, I'm just saying that sometimes there's not value in, maintaining, one more little 6-inch tree. What we really want to try to do is maintain large wooded areas. And that's what helps the wildlife too, right? Deer and turkey aren't gonna hide out in a row of trees. They want a larger wooded area.
Here we don't care about the turkeys. Well, look, the 6 inch diameter breast height, I think I pulled that from some other municipalities' ordinances. And my fight may actually be with the SALDO, less than the PRD.
I was gonna ask the question, what are some of the other not that that's dispositive for us, but what are some of the other
I
towns?
mean, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which one it was, but I know I looked at Marshall and Richlands to come up with some of the first drafts of this, so probably in there somewhere it said 6 inches, but, I'm sure that's consistent with their SALDOs though, so. I guess make it 8. But I think the supervisor should be thinking about changing that to a more tighter standard.
Until they do that,
Yeah.
say, make it consistent.
We're already
Well-
addressing the PRD ordinance now.
Could I just make one comment to that?
Sure.
I guess I would just encourage, maybe an inconsistency here is okay, because a PRD by nature is an exception. So why not have an exception for the exception?
I mean, it can, as far as it can stay 6 inches, I don't care, I thought just for uniformity's sake, you make it 8, but there's, if you leave it 6 inches, and I guess, you know, based on the saldo, they can come in and cut every 6-inch tree down, and there's no penalty for it.
Correct.
So it's just a matter of trying to encourage them to, if they're aware there's that many trees there, maybe they'll leave some of them. So, I guess I don't really have any strong feeling on that.
You know, I think philosophically, I tend to agree with you, but, I've represented enough developers who've taken advantage of ambiguities in ordinances and inconsistencies like this can lead to trouble, so. I think follow the saldo and we'll deal with it.
Make it 8 inches.
Yeah, make it,
Okay, that's on, what section is that?
that's in 2 places.
Yeah, I'm on one of those places right now.
It's at,
I'm on section 404,
right,
B,
yeah,
2,
2, yep.
B2, that should be 8.
On page 9, it's also 6
Yeah,
inches.
page 9,
At the
number
top.
3, right in the top of the page.
Okay, page 9. I don't have page numbers on this. What's the section?
It's 404C3.
Okay.
Could I ask a procedural question? So if the saldo, should it just reference then the saldo? Because what if the saldo is updated at some point to be 6 inches?
Well, then the saldo is controlling until it's overridden by the PRD.
By us.
So
Okay.
then they have to come in and make minor changes to the PRD ordinance just to, keep them in sync. Because having sat through a number of court cases the township was involved in, if there's any ambiguity, the judges do tend to look at that in favor of the plaintiff rather than the townships. So, they just need to be aware of that.
And the saldo, it's a cumbersome process to change the saldo.
Yes. This whole process started 6 years ago, roughly. Started with the saldo,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Okay, so to answer your question, is that if the saldo were to get changed, let's say to 6, what that would force me to do, as I was reviewing the plan, is I would ask the developer to, when they're doing their tree survey, to count the 6 inch. And I basically say that if you don't count them, then I will send my people out there to count the 6 inch. And we'll do it that way. So I mean, we'll work it out.
Okay. What's the board's feeling? Do we have it where we want it, to send it on to the supervisors?
With these last changes we discussed
Yeah.
tonight.
I've saved them, I can forward them out to everybody.
I'd be happy to make that motion.
Yeah.
So we can be done with this?
Yeah.
Okay. You wanna make that motion?
Yes.
Motion by Kevin, do we have a second?
I will second that motion gladly.
Motion by Kevin, second by Peter, to send this on to the,
With the changes we discussed.
with the changes discussed.
Yep.
And I will forward a copy of this to, actually, I think I'll use your last email, but I can't do that till I get home.
Could I add to that, with the request that the supervisor schedule a public hearing?
Okay.
That'd be the intent.
Well, they would have to do that to adopt it,
Right.
but yes, yeah.
Will the proposed revisions be posted for the public before
They will be for the public hearing.
but not before?
After the board approves advertising, it'll become public after that.
So I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, Mr. Carter?
How can we be
So
prepared?
after,
Okay, sorry.
board approves advertising, it'll be ready for the public.
Okay, so they
So
approve the
it'll
advertising.
probably go online the next day.
Then they go online. Meanwhile, it's still a period of time, like 4 weeks till the public, from the
Yeah,
point of
but it might
advertisement
go
till the public
January
hearing.
sometime, if not even February, but time-wise, it could be January. But then again, there's a reorganization meeting. I don't know how that's gonna play a part. If they may choose not to have it until February,
Okay,
which will give more time for the public to do
But
it.
you will have a chance to see the whole document prior to the public hearing.
okay,
It would be at least 2 weeks, because I've got to advertise it twice in
Okay.
successive weeks, so.
From what I've been told is as soon as the board approves advertising, and if they do that in December, 10th, it should be online December 11th.
okay.
Because from what I've been told, once they make that move to advertise, it goes public.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, we hit save.
It's
We hit save.
I hit save a couple times.
Two neophyte questions. We have nothing in this document about utilities being above ground or underground.
That's in the cell though.
Oh, that's in the south,
Yeah.
okay. And the second question deals with HMOs. It is mentioned at the end about
Health
HMO.
maintenance organization.
No,
HOAs.
That's HMO? Oh my God, HOAs, I'm sorry.
Close
I'm
enough.
slipping there, you know what I mean? In my plan, we got rid of it, you know, and so it's not there. So, I mean, we do have common area, you know, I'm assuming it's cut, but no one asked me about anything about that.
Okay, is your plan a PRD?
Is it
What's
your plan?
Shawnee Ridge.
That's a straight subdivision, I think.
Well, I think that doesn't really matter if there's maintenance of the common open spaces not getting done, the township can come in and do the maintenance and bill the residents for it. They bill every, prorated. Covered both cases.
Shawnee Ridge is a PRD.
Is it a PRD?
Okay.
Okay, the fact that we did that, I was thinking, I don't know if this is, can we have a master HMO? Where everybody in theory
An
comes.
HOA.
HOA, my God, okay, HOA, where we have this umbrella organization to make sure nothing goes away, okay? And then even, they're all run individually, but they come under this bigger umbrella. Unless-
Probably
So-
not, because each
That is the
development
township.
would have its own
Contract,
procedures and its own criteria that they have to deal with. Now, some plans, I live in a plan that has an HOA, which is pretty much inactive, though every now and then we decide to assess people to do some maintenance here and there in the common areas. Other ones like Walnut Woods, I think they have a very active HOA that stays on, they have regular meetings and stuff like that. So, it's hard to force people to do something, especially after houses start changing hands. The original owners are probably all for it, but then as they change hands, it kind of falls by the wayside.
And a lot of this would be governed by the Planned Community Act. I mean, generally speaking, if you have it, it doesn't matter whether it's a subdivision or a PRD. If you have a residential development with common property that the owners are going to have to commonly maintain and pay for, but Pennsylvania's Planned Community Act says you gotta have an HOA, you gotta have bylaws, you gotta assess, the whole ball of wax. So if it's done right, the Planned Community Act should take care of most of that.
Okay, but who enforces that, Kevin?
Anybody who buys into the plan?
Okay, but if you get 20% of the people that don't wanna pay into it, how does that all work? I mean, it's a fair question.
You get,
'Cause that's what happens.
Well, I mean, if the association, parade of horribles, the association has lien rights, they can foreclose those liens. I mean, there are things you can do.
Like in Walnut Woods, you would have to get a letter from the homeowners to sell.
Yeah. And
And that's when.
your resale certificate is gonna say
Correct.
what you owe, so.
Yes,
yeah.
same, I'm on Seven Springs, the same thing.
So in Preston's case, in Shawnee Ridge, theirs dissolved. Is it just because nobody cared? what's the real answer there?
It's a very common tale. And that's the trouble we have with the detention basins and why we made the changes in the Southers regarding the detention basins. Because a lot of them, a lot of the original ones were in the hands of the HOA. And with MS4, the township is left on the hook with these things. And what you're doing is you're going back and basically suing voting people that are gonna vote for you. So it's a very dangerous little trail. And like whoever just said this, that when someone doesn't pay their fee and you're actually using these fees to go hire lawyers to go after the people that aren't paying the fees, it just doesn't work.
Not that there's anything wrong with hiring lawyers.
Hire lawyers and engineers.
But yeah, it ends up with a problem for the township. So we've kind of taken the position, at least with the detention basin, because that's the elephant in the room, is that if water goes onto a public street, which in turn goes through public sewers, which the detention basin is also public. So as soon as it becomes public water, we're just followed straight through. If it's a situation where it's a commercial facility and it's basically commercial water going onto a driveway that they own, then it's private. But we're still responsible.
Okay. Anything else from any plan commission member?
We need to take a vote, or did we?
Oh, did we vote on?
No, I don't think we did.
No.
We have the
We had a
motion
second
and a
motion.
second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Send our best wishes on to the supervisors to expeditiously deal with this.
Godspeed.
Hey, I just wanna say for the record too, to thank Kevin and Dan in particular for sort of leading us through this thing and all the many hours that they spent keeping track of all these discussions and changes, so I wanna thank them for their efforts to help us get this done.
Well, anytime I couldn't fall asleep at night, I just started reading it, out like a light, you know. Got to the point. Okay, anything else from anybody on the plan commission?
When is the December meeting, assuming we have one?
It's the third Wednesday.
That you guys will have one? December 18th.
Any comments from anybody in the audience about anything?
Thank you.
Pertaining to the planning commission. Okay. We have a motion
never
to
did quite
adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second? Okay. Boy, Kevin and Peter have been doing a lot of.
Doing all the work tonight, so
All in
they
favor
got-
indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
You done with that too, yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It's got my name on it. Happy Thanksgiving.
I have a legal question
Yes,
from the
sir.
HOA.
Yeah, I got a
So
bunch of
how
those.
are they tied back to